Hi guys, SKETI here, and welcome back to a slightly different tutorial this time. We're going to be looking at 5 ways that music producers can break that creative deadlock that we often find ourselves in that stops us from making tunes. Now these tips are no sort of sure-fast way to become a better producer or more creative, but these are things that I've found that have helped me out when I get stuck with not knowing what to write next or how to move on with the tune. So let's get to it. So number one, we're going to look at a sort of workflow thing that I got stuck in for a while. That when I was starting to make a tune, I was basically loading up a blank project, going in straight into a MIDI channel, adding a VST to it, and then starting to make sounds and doing loads of sound design. But then after about an hour, I realised I hadn't really actually created anything musically. I was just making sounds. So what I found, and I found a tutorial which I'll link to in the description, is by Noisia when they did their Future Music masterclass, is splitting the process into 2 different stages. So 1, you've got your sound design stage, and 2, you've got your songwriting stage. And what I find now is I spend like 2-3 days at a time just making sounds, and that's all I'm doing, is just doing all of that sound design, that work, just making loads of bass sounds, drum sounds, pad sounds, whatever it is, just so I've got a bank of stuff that I can use. And usually what I find by doing that as well is I end up with some ideas as I'm making the sounds. I think, oh well, that would work with this sort of bass line that I've got in my head, or whatsoever it might be, and then that might actually spur a track to be made. But then once I've got all those sounds, I then go into a new project, and then I can just start loading sounds up and be creative from pretty much the minute I've opened the project, instead of worrying, okay right, I've got to create all of these sounds from scratch, and then I'm not really thinking creatively anymore. So that's one way that you can do it. The second way is on the back of that is having a template that's ready to go. Instead of every single time you set up a new project, whether you're using Ableton, Cubase, Fruity Loops, Logic, whatever it is that you're using, you've got literally a blank canvas with no channels in it, nothing like that. So what you could do is basically things that you use pretty much all the time in every single one of your tracks, is have that already set up in a template. So again, that speeds up your creative process, so you're not just ending up in a deadlock of going, right, I'm going to have to go through, set up all of these channels, and then, oh, that's taken 20 minutes, and now all of that creative energy is pretty much gone out of the window. So the way I do it is I have all my stems set up. So I've got my drum stems, my kicks, my snare stems, my sidechain channel set up, my sub stem, my bass stem, leads, pads, vox and effects, and all my effects returns set up, and my master channel with its sort of mastering utilities on there as well. So then I can pretty much just load up a synth, find the sound that I did in sound design stage, and then boom, I'm being creative straight away. Anyway, number 3. So this is probably the most difficult tip that will be in this tutorial, and some people might not like this, but honestly, learn an instrument. I'm not saying become a master of an instrument, but just have become familiar with, say, a keyboard. Now obviously being a producer, you're most likely going to have a MIDI keyboard, so I'm not saying go out and buy a bass, a guitar, or a drum kit or whatever, or a big massive grand piano, but a MIDI keyboard, and just play along with some of your favourite tunes, find out what key it's in, and then just start improvising until you get a little bit more confident. And what that will hopefully lead on to is you start to understand music in more of a practical way, instead of just programming notes in with a mouse and a keyboard on a screen all the time. Because at the end of the day, music is about obviously playing it, not just the only aspect of it, but that's where it started. Musicians getting together, or someone just playing an instrument and people gathering around and singing along with whatever was being played. Or even like taking it back, just people singing. That is still an instrument in itself. So just by looking at how to learn an instrument and just beginning the sort of stages of learning whatever instrument it is that you find interesting in, again, not becoming a master because you don't have to be a musician, but having some background knowledge in how instruments are played will give you some creative energy and ideas when you're making your own tunes. So number 4. One thing that I found is I got into a stage where I just wasn't listening to any music. So this is, I think, a big tip that I find really useful, is actually listen to other people's music, because creativity doesn't happen in isolation, and you need to be inspired by something. And it doesn't have to just be music, it could be sort of a film that you're watching, or if you're just walking down the street and you overhear a conversation, there's sort of like a melody or some rhythm that happens in people's speech as they're talking as well, and that might trigger an idea. But listen to as many things as you can, find inspiration from other art forms, so on and so forth, and then that might spur on some ideas for yourself. Now, I'm not saying obviously listen to a piece of music and then just literally go and rip it off and copy it. Sometimes it might be useful just to break a track down to see how that was made, so you can take those ideas and use them in your own music, but obviously don't rip other people's music off. But just getting inspired by listening to other people's music, and also breaking out of the genre that you might just be stuck in. So say you're just making drum and bass, go and listen to some pop music or some jazz music, all the different types of music. Like for example, when I was making a breaks track a few years ago, Pentatonics are a vocal a cappella group. I heard one of their tracks and I liked what they'd done with the chord sequence, and I thought maybe I could try that in my track, and that ended up spurring on one of my breaks tracks that I made. And anyway, last tip to finish off with, number 5, is seek out creative people. Sort of like what I said there about creativity doesn't happen in isolation. Get inspired by people that you look up to, and try and seek out other creative people in your community, whether it's on social media or immediate vicinity, in your town, the area that you live. Go and find other musical type of people or creative types of people, even if they're just doing like art or making movies or whatever it is, but people that are doing creative things. Because the more that you're around people with a positive energy and they're getting inspired by creativity, that should hopefully lift your inspiration, allow you to be more creative as well. So when you start writing your own tracks, you've got some ideas in your head and you've got that motivation to go forwards with it as well. Anyway guys, I hope you found this tutorial useful, and if you have, please drop a like, a comment, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell as well so you see these videos more in the future. Share this video around. Also, I'm on Twitch and Discord as well, where I do regular weekly streams on Twitch where people send me the music and we just have a good time. It's a lovely community over there as well, so if you ever fancy joining it, I stream from 8 PM GMT most weeknights. So yeah, check that out. Anyway guys, I shall see you next time. Bye.
Everybody jump up, come on! Come on!